I'd always been a fan of those little serendipities in life. The unexpected moments when a change of scenery or a new relationship revitalizes your perspective. And who would have thought I'd find the spice to my otherwise predictable life in the most familiar of spots? The kitchen? Working at the Italian restaurant in Seoul, my taste buds were constantly entranced by the flavors of Naples, Sicily, and Rome. Yet my heart yearned for an ingredient that wasn't listed in any recipe. It was Jin-ah, a coworker, who added that missing ingredient. From the moment our eyes first met across the bustling kitchen, there was a spark that glowed brighter than the roaring flames of the kitchen's oven. There was a certain intensity about her, a passion for cooking that mirrored my own. I admired her dedication to perfection, her meticulous approach to plating each dish, and her joyful spirit that filled the kitchen with infectious laughter. These qualities drew me towards her, quietly stirring a deep affection in my heart. I remember one particular day, we were preparing a spaghetti carbonara together. Each swirl of pasta that Jin-ah wound around the fork, the way she expertly tossed the pasta in the egg cheese mixture, there was an artistry to her movements, a rhythm that was as enticing as the most melodious symphony. It was in this moment, amidst the sizzling pans and the savory aromas, that I understood the depth of my feelings for her. My heart pounded in my chest like dough beneath the baker's pounding hands. Mustering the courage, I asked her if she'd join me for a cup of coffee at a local cafe after work. Her warm smile in agreement felt like a victory, a well-earned reward after a long day in the kitchen. I hoped that, like our combined efforts in the kitchen could create mouth-watering dishes, this date could be the start of a beautiful concoction called love in our lives. The date was everything I had hoped for: warm, intimate, and sprinkled with shared laughter and stories of our culinary journeys. The small cafe, with its cozy ambiance and the soft glow of hanging fairy lights, served as the perfect backdrop for our growing bond. While I've always found comfort in being around food, sharing it with Jin-ah that day felt different. Each sip of the creamy latte, every shared piece of the blueberry cheesecake, felt like a shared secret, adding a new depth to my affection for her. It was as if our feelings had been kneaded and baked into something truly special, a delicacy fresh out of the oven, waiting to be savored. Just like the aroma of a simmering pot, the anticipation of getting to know Jin-ah more intimately filled the air, making it a little hard to pinch myself back to reality. If this was a recipe we were following, then asking her out on a date was merely the first step. We were far from the finished dish. Our first rendezvous at the local cafe was sprinkled with smiles and memories, each one adding a unique flavor to our growing bond. I was excited, yet there was a bit of nervous energy coursing through my veins. The simple wooden interiors of the cafe, doused in warm golden lights that mirrored my feelings. It was a cozy canvas for us to paint our stories on it. From our culinary journeys to shared dreams of opening very own eateries, it was just like attending a culinary festival, each tale having a distinct taste and zest. There was an undeniable spark between us, just like the time when wine meets the flame in a flambé, glowing brighter and strong with each passing second. All previous relationships sounded like a hastily prepared entree in comparison to what we were slow cooking, allowing time to marry every distinct flavor into a delectable masterpiece. Every nod of hers, every shared laughter, every moment our hands brushed while passing the scrumptious blueberry cheesecake, it was as if these fleeting tingle moments were garnishing to our blooming relationship. Reflecting upon it now, the date was tantamount to a cooking session. We were open to trying new experiences, and each memory added was a fresh ingredient tossed into the pot. Intricately, we kneaded our experiences together, not afraid of the unfamiliarity, but embracing the whole process like a lightly seasoned, well-cooked meal. The cheery glow in her eyes, her heartfelt laughter as she shared her pastry-making mishap, and the childhood stories that brought a soft glow to her face. These moments carried the warmth of Mom's hand-baked bread, comforting yet nurturing. As the evening transpired, a sense of contentment washed over me like the quiet after the restaurant's rush hour, serene and satisfactory. That euphoria was amplified tenfold when I looked at Jin-ah across the table and saw the same comfort mirrored in her eyes. It was uncanny how cooking had always been my sanctuary, and with Jin-ah, I was creating the same safe haven, except this time, using experiences instead of ingredients. It was undeniable. The first date had etched a special memory, stirring the prelude of hearty conversations to savor for a lifetime. Love, quite amusingly, can be quite similar to baking. Both require careful attention, a dash of creativity, and a spattering of patience. With Jin-ah, our deepening bond reminded me of a delicately cooked bisque, slowly simmering, absorbing all the richness, gradually turning more flavorsome. Despite our individual personalities, each as distinctive as a standout ingredient in a dish, there was a growing harmony, much like how garlic and onion work perfectly together in a sofrito. The most cherished memories take shape in the most unexpected places. Our kitchen at the restaurant turned into an undulating dance floor, where a rhythm was set by the clatter of utensils on the stove, the crackle of the oven, the sizzling pans, while we gracefully maneuvered around, exchanging smiles, sharing jokes, deep into our journey of creating memorable dishes. There was still something so special about Christmas Eve of that year. I can still remember the hushed silence, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the tick-tock of the kitchen clock. It was just me, the kitchen, and the ingredients for a soulful Christmas dinner. I was carefully slicing through marbled steak, savoring the anticipation of Joyeux Noël dinner, preparing each dish with the tenderness akin to handling a beautiful symphony. The echo of our blended laughter still lingered in those corners, making every moment a spectacle of our shared passion. Cooking for Jin-ah gave a whole new meaning to my culinary journey. Her eyes shone brighter than my well-polished cutlery set as I served her the specially prepared dishes, appetizers, mains, and desserts, each course a token of my growing affection for her. Looking back, I realized that our relationship was a lot like those dishes. Much like the appetizers or antipasto, our initial association was refreshing, awakening a desire to know more about each other. As we delved deeper into our bond, like the main course, we began experiencing the complexities, the occasional disagreements, the little quirks, the shared dreams. The dessert, however, signified a sweet comfort, the knowledge that we enjoy a special connection despite our strikingly different personalities. You know, it's funny how life imitates art. These experiences felt as though life was imitating cooking. With Jin-ah around, every day was like a new recipe waiting to be explored, every memory a special ingredient enriching the delectable dish that our relationship was turning into. The magic lay not in the perfection but in the blend, the balance. The magic lay in the cooking. Now, we were both on a journey, savoring every bite, looking forward to another fascinating recipe, another enchanting day in our eventful life. The year of 2022 was like kneading a particularly challenging dough. It was a period full of pushing and pulling, detangling knotty issues, just like the gluten strands in dough. Work pressure was at an all-time high, like the heat of an oven, and it slowly seeped into our personal lives. A situation not so dissimilar to the way yeast gradually works its magic in a batch of dough. Work, which had brought Jin-ah and me together, ironically started playing a role in creating differences between us. We found ourselves caught in a tangle of professional stress and personal expectations, akin to a poorly churned pasta dough. Amidst the whirlwind of a bustling kitchen and hectic schedules, we somehow managed to lose track of the synchronized dance we had so seamlessly mastered. One particular night remains etched in my memory. After a long and taxing day at the restaurant, an argument sparked between us. We were both on edge, our words tossed around like a stir-fry on high heat. Tempers flared, a lot like the lapping flames of our kitchen stove, and we found ourselves lost in a heated exchange. It was unsettling to see how our beautiful symphony, our harmonious blend, was getting tainted by the stress of our professional lives. We had always been like the classic pairing of basil and tomato, different, yet complementary. But a leakage of work stress into our tranquil space was turning us into incompatible ingredients. Two strong flavors vying for dominance, rather than blending into a cohesive dish. Despite the heated argument, neither of us lost our care for each other. Each of us, much like the way we carefully prepared neutrally balanced dishes, made a conscious effort to address the issue. That argument, as I now see, was not a sign of a deteriorating bond, but an indication of the need for change. Much like how bakers sometimes need to alter a traditional recipe to adapt to changing tastes. In retrospect, life threw a bit of a curveball at us. Of course, hasn't it always been like that? Isn't it amazing how the challenges thrown our way are like the pivotal moments in a recipe? The exact moment when the dough has been kneaded enough? Or when the pasta sauce has simmered perfectly? The hiccup we faced was like that unexpected dash of spice in an otherwise comforting bowl of soup. It shook us, stirred our lives a bit, and made us reconsider the depth of our bond. But let's face it, just like a successful dish is not always about smooth cooking, a successful relationship is not always about smooth sailing. It's how you adapt to these challenges, just like a talented chef, that shapes the dish and its success, and in this case, our relationship. Our simmering issues eventually began to cool down after that piping hot argument. The blistering heat that arose between us was doused much like how a hearty ragu sauce is calmed by a generous splash of red wine. Jin-ah and I decided to face our differences, committed to sorting out the confusion and misunderstandings like how a well-dressed salad is patiently bound together by the harmony of various flavors and textures. We took small steps at first, like adding a dash of salt to a dish to elevate the flavor subtly, communicating more openly after work and sharing our problems, rather than letting them mingle and form a disastrous concoction. I remember a particular day, a withering summer day, as hot as the sizzling grill at our restaurant. Despite the draining heat wave outside, Jin-ah and I decided to share a meal after our shift ended, under the comforting shade of a maple tree. The leafy canopy casting a mosaic of sunlight on us, we unpacked homemade sandwiches, the buttery aroma of the bread mingling with the sweet scent of summer flowers. With every bite, with every shared laugh and our hands brushing accidentally, I felt like we were mending our relationship, layer by layer. Much like a delicate millefeuille, each layer represented a reconciliation, an acceptance, or an act of understanding. Our conversation drifted from our shared love for cooking to our individual dreams and aspirations, a soothing balm much needed on our strained relationship. That day, under the shade of the maple tree, we became two enamored souls again rather than two frenzied chefs locking horns in a workplace scenario. It was as if we were back to cooking together in perfect harmony, the way olive oil dances with spices and garlic in a pan, or the way a velvety bechamel sauce blankets al dente pasta, just right. The quiet resilience that both of us showed during that turbulent time was like the stubborn persistence of yeast working its way in dough. It just needed time, patience, and the right environment to rise anew. This phase, or rather this recipe of reconciliation, instilled a sense of maturity in us, making us realize that we were not just chefs in the kitchen or lovers in the park. We were teammates, partners, navigating this complicated dish of life together, one recipe at a time. Those long-awaited moments of peace amid the storm were to me the sweetest dessert after a hearty meal. Isn't it amazing, I thought to myself, how love is a lot like cooking. Sometimes a dash of conflict only enhances the overall taste, making it richer and more fulfilling. Just like how a pinch of salt can bring out the sweetness in a dessert, with Jin-ah, I discovered a recipe of love that was uniquely ours, beautifully imperfect yet so flavorful, a true testament of our journey together. The year then took an unexpected turn. Just as we were slowly reprising our original cadence and rhythm of affection, a sharp twist in the plot unfolded that was harsher than a mouthful of unsweetened espresso. We were both peeling onions for the day's sope, a comforting dish that always reminded me of home. Jin-ah had just started chopping the vegetables with deft movements, and I was cooking down our hearty ragu sauce. Our cleaning staff had already left, and the restaurant echoed with muffled whispers and the occasional clanging of cooking utensils. Everything was going on as usual, until she dropped the knife abruptly and turned towards me. She took a deep breath, her eyes brimming with emotions I couldn't decipher, a mix of resolute determination and an underlying sadness. Her voice was as clear and as precise as her knife cuts when she spoke. "Hyun, I've been thinking about this a lot. I think we should break up." The words crashed down on me like a turbulent wave, sudden and jarring. It was a sharp contrast to the idyllic peace we had painstakingly built over the past few months, a peace that now felt as fragile as glass. I was lost for words. We had just started finding our way back to each other, and now I felt like I was back at square one, dazed, confused, and disheartened. Everything felt surreal at the moment. Amid the din of bustling kitchen and the aroma of food around us, I felt like an actor. witnessing a dramatic scene unfold in front of my eyes. The steaming ragu bubbling in the pan seemed to mirror my state of mind, agitated and chaotic. The one thing that was as constant as the North Star in my life, my love for Jin-ah, was now wavering on the brink of extinction. A whirlwind of emotions churned within me, but I stood still, gripped by an unforeseen situation. I stared blankly at her, my mind rummaging, trying to find the right words. Words that could express the seismic emotions trembling within me, but everything just echoed with silence. I wanted to object, voice out my disagreement, question her, or even plead, but I held back. And there it was, the love story that we had baked together with careful measures of passion, respect, understanding, and compromise, had now, in the face of personal differences, crumbled like a poorly baked soufflé. It was as if we had cooked a complex dish together, only to realize that the resultant flavor was not to our liking. Despite the surprise and the heartbreak, in my heart, I knew that I harbored no ill feelings for Jin-ah. Instead, I silently pledged to respect her decision, a bitter ingredient in our shared recipe of love, reluctantly agreed upon and seldom touched upon. After all, sometimes, knowing when to step back is the right garnish to respect a person's individuality and their trajectory. Despite everything, I cherished the time we had spent together cooking side by side. We had developed a rhythm, a palpable understanding that surfaced not just in our meals but also in our day-to-day interactions, much like a perfectly balanced dish that resonated in each bite. There was so much I had learned from Jade, not just about sous vide techniques or how to perfectly julienne a bell pepper, but about relationships and navigating equipoise between professional aspirations and personal emotions. It was ironic that in a place where we were supposed to cook together for others, we ended up cooking our relationship, albeit unintentionally. The days that followed were particularly challenging. The pungent smell of onions and the bubbling soap weren't just food elements for me anymore. They were stark reminders of the fateful day and the gaping void that had surfaced in my life. However tough it was, I gathered myself and continued to put one foot in front of the other, for I knew that life, much like a bustling dinner service, wouldn't stop for anyone. It wasn't easy breaking the news to our colleagues, our dear friends at the restaurant. They were saddened yet respectful of our decision. Meanwhile, I found solace in my work, my sanctuary where dough replaced heartaches and stirring sauce felt calmer than confronting emotions. The heat of the oven felt comforting against the cold reality of life, the soothing flurry of kitchen activities serving as a coping mechanism, much like my meditation and diving. As the days went by, the pain alleviated, the memories faded into the background, and the longing for the initial spark reduced. I knew it was time to close the chapter and move on with my life. The experience marked a pivotal point in my life, teaching me that sometimes paths should diverge for the better. And just like that, the chapter titled Jin-ah and I in the book of my life concluded on a bittersweet note. However, the narrative was far from over. It was time for a new chapter, with new beginnings and new lessons, just as I had done when I left the comfort of my family bakery to venture into the unknown.